Welcome to the Scottish Basketball Podcast. We post weekly episodes on the senior game in Scotland. You can join for free on Patreon, Spotify, and YouTube to receive a notification when new episodes are released. Access to the podcast episodes will always be free. You can make a contribution for yourself or for someone else as a gift through membership on Patreon. However small and infrequent, any contribution is very helpful and very much appreciated. You can get in touch with the podcast by sending us a message on Instagram or an email. If you like the content, share and send it to a friend who you think would like it too.
Bob Taft had an outsized impact on those around him and the sport of basketball in Scotland. Born and raised in Greenock, Bob's senior playing career took in stints with Greenock Pacers, Inverclyde, Paisley, Kilmarnock and Team Glasgow, team legends in Clydebank, Falkirk, Watt College and Cumnock. He also played for the Scotland and Great Britain civil service teams through his career in the post office. Off the court, he was instrumental in the formation of the Renfrew Basketball Club, who now, as the Renfrew Rocks, reached their first Scottish Cup final this year, 37 years later. At senior national level, he was the head coach at Watt College in Division 1 and 2 from 97 to 99, and assistant coach at Troon Tornadoes in Division 1 from 2009 to 2012. He was the Scottish men's national team assistant coach during the same period, with close friend and head coach Tom Campbell. He coached at cadet and junior level for many teams, including Paisley, St Mirren and Renfrew, as well as for the Great Britain Civil Service team and Strathclyde University, across a career that spanned more than 40 years. He continued to play. He was involved in Masters basketball, winning bronze at a tournament in Nice in 2015 and silver in Turin in 2019. He was instrumental on and off the court for many years with the Strathclyde, Scotland and GB Masters teams. The Bob Taft Trophy was inaugurated in 2022 as an annual Masters Challenge match between Scotland and Ireland, and that's going to be played this week on Friday at PlaySport. The trophy has now been contested 4 times, with the series tied at 2 apiece, following 2 wins on the bounce by Ireland. This year, to mark Bob's 70th birthday, the match will be contested at over 70 level. In this episode of the History of Basketball in Scotland, I'm delighted to be joined by Tom Campbell, Charlie Woods, John Campbell and Liam Lavelle to chat about Bob and the trophy match this weekend.
Well, I first came across Bob in 1982 when I had left Cumnock, my first stage at Cumnock, first spell at Cumnock, and moved to a local club, played local league for Kilmarnock. And I would describe it as a sliding door moment because I distinctly remember, I can remember being in the change room at the end of a game, just Bob and I. And he turned to me and he said that he just joined. And I've got to say, it's always difficult going to a new club, especially if you're coming off the bench and not knowing, and if you don't make an impact straight away. And he felt he wasn't any time going to give up. No, I didn't know him. So, and I said to him, listen, hold on, I'll have a word with the coach. And I did, and he got more court time, and he flourished from there and showed his true mettle. But if I hadn't done that, right, the next 40 years would have been totally different if I hadn't said to him and he hadn't said to me. And so much so the impact he had in Scottish basketball was that we played for Kilmarnock, and at that time you couldn't put a team straight into the first division. And the plan was that Kilmarnock would, if they win the league, would then go into the first division, and they would then become, what they did become, Team Glasgow. We went to Mingus Hill for the last game of the season, and both teams were tied for the league. And I still remember now the Bob at the very end of the game. I can clearly see him now making a big shot to tie the game and send the game into overtime, which we then won. And Bob would recount the story in later years, and I can still see the gentleman, a good friend of ours, a really good friend of ours, who became one of the best referees in Scotland, who was an ex-Mingus Hill player, was sitting there, and as Bob made the shot, he says, "You're baldy headed, and I won't finish the rest of it." And so anyway, the local newspaper the next day had this, or the next week's edition had the headline, "Bald Eagle swoops to send the game into overtime," which they won. Big caption, which I thought was terrific. And as I say, Kilmarnock then went on to become Team Glasgow. And Bob and I played with Team Glasgow for a couple of years. But that hadn't been for that moment where he spoke to me, and then it would have been different.
Charlie, what were your first interactions like with Bob, and what was your impression of him?
I've played against Bob since I think I was the first year at Paisley. When I went, I was 17-year-old. Bob was just 2 months younger than me. I remember playing against him. He played with the Greenock boys down in Greenock for quite a while. He come up and played with Paisley. He played with Paisley Doigs. So, you know, you got to play training with him, but not actually in a game. But I think the first game I ever actually played with Bob in was a Strathclyde team in 1983. We won the inter-area tournament up at Stirling Uni. And Bob was disappointed that day because we were promised free beer vouchers for Foster's later that evening, which did not materialise. That was his biggest disappointment of the weekend. After that, you know, again, playing against him local league and national league. And then it wasn't really he came and played with the Masters. I think his first outing in the Masters was 2002 when we went to Dublin. And at that time it was just called Glasgow. And you really got to know Bob then. Really good player, phenomenal shooter, great sense of humour, and a great guy to have in your team when you were away in tournaments and everything else.
And finally, John, what were your first impressions of Bob and where did you meet him for the first time?
Well, probably back in the Paisley days when he was playing for Doigs. But as I said earlier, I mean, I played with him more, I don't know, 20 years later when he invited me to come along and play for Renfrew in the Strathclyde second division. And Renfrew was the team that Bob and Donnie Henderson started 2 or 3 years earlier. And that's a team now that is one of the top teams in Scotland that played in the Scottish Cup final this year. So it says a lot about what Bob started back in probably around 93, 94. But anyway, that first season was the one when, unfortunately, 4 of the boys were involved in a serious road accident when we were coming back from a game down at Kilwinning. And I don't know the comparable severity of their injuries, but the one that returned for the last game or 2 of the season when we were trying to win the second division, and we did, but the player that returned was Bob. And I just think that in part shows his passion for the game. And I remained there for another 4 seasons. And Bob was a great teammate. Just as Charlie said, a tremendous shooter. There was a lot of games where you really did rely on his 3-point shots. And we were very successful. We got to a Chairman's Cup final, I think, in the 3rd year. And I've still got some of the clippings in the house that Bob, I think, I don't. It might have been Matt Valance who wrote for the local paper. I'm not sure, but Robert supplied the information, and he was always very generous with his teammates. He might have scored a lot of points, but he always spread the praise widely and included 3 or 4 of the other players. So yeah, a good 5 years. Enjoyed it.
Interesting, John and Charlie. Both, obviously, I played with you, Charlie, in those inter-area tournaments. But John, I played in that game that down in Kilwinning. I played against that night, and I'm not sure if you can straight back, but I remember visiting Bob in the hospital. I remember it was a tragic and really quite dramatic accident, I have to say. But I played in that night down in Kilwinning against you. I played for, I think it was maybe the Magnum of Kilwinning.
John, you touched on it there. What was, I'll go back to you, Tom. What was Bob like as a player? Purely on the court, we're going to obviously touch on his off-court antics later on, but purely on the court, describe him as a player, describe the strengths of his game, describe why you wanted Bob on your team.
He was an exceptional 3-point shooter. That was the first thing. He was a safe pair of hands as well as a guard that didn't turn the ball over much when you were playing with Bob. He knew the game well. He knew how the game should be played, and that's why he was always wanted Bob in your team. Going down the stretch, if you needed a 3-point shot, you know who was getting it. You know, there wasn't any dispute about who was shooting the ball. you know, Bob was getting the ball, and, you know, more times than not, he would score it. So it was a real safe pair of hands to start with, but an exceptional shooter if you needed him.
Interesting, Charlie, that Bob was telling me that during our career, they introduced the three-point shot. So we started off, there was no three-point shot. And Bob would say how that prolonged or extended his career when the three-point shot came in.
Yeah.
That was his main attribute, three-point shooting. And then it's very interesting too that John might agree with this as well. Towards the end of our days, they actually increased the range of the three-point shot. And everyone, I think, struggled that a wee bit as it, you know, as it forward in there. But that was absolutely his, as well as shooting was a big thing. But I think, John, you touched upon just camaraderie with Bob and just being a good teammate on and off the floor.
It certainly was. No, I think it's different now. There's a generation which can shoot three-point shots much under more control than that. But Bob, I think, he had that ability. You know, it wasn't as if he was just heaving the ball towards the basket. His shot was under control, and he made a fair percentage of them. Yeah.
Do any of Bob's playing career highlights stand out above the others? Where do you remember him being most successful on the court? Was it National League, Scottish Cup? Obviously, there was the Corach Cup with Team Glasgow in, I think, '84. Any particular playing career highlights stand out?
I still, that the very first time making that big shot, and again, that changed the shape of Scottish basketball because Team Glasgow became one of the big three. Team Glasgow went on to be the first team to beat Murray International, I think, in I don't know how many years in the league. The Falkirk had been in the cup. And if it hadn't been for Bob making that shot in particular, then basketball would have changed.
Yeah, I mean, I played with him in the Masters. I never really played National League with him. Been plenty of Masters games we have played, and where, you know, Bob's won us the game at the end. Some very good shooting that you've been very pleased about. But yeah, I mean, National League I played against him often enough, and I knew he could shoot. And when you were telling someone to mark Bob, you would say to him, just don't leave him, because as he got older, he maybe lost a bit of speed. And I said, don't leave him, because he's not quick enough to get past you. Of course, guys sag off Bob, and then both 3 points go down, and you look at the guy you've told to mark him and say, like, how's he getting a 3-point shot away? I told you to mark. No, stand next to him. But you know, people drift off him. And Bob, everybody knew Bob could shoot, you know, but he still got his shot away.
Yeah. I think one of the big things in the second spell I had with Cumnock when Bob joined is there were a team of many shooters, and it was good because you couldn't concentrate on one particular person. Jim Morrison played, John Duncan played, I played, and Bob, and sometimes it was said that perhaps you needed more than one basketball to play the game, I have to say, but good times.
Maybe not strictly relating to his ability and his achievements as a player, but he loved the jokes, and he would repeat the one or two effective ones time after time. And what Tom just said there, he used to say that any of us could be the butt of this joke. He used to say that we were nicknamed Mastermind. 20 points and no passes.
I had that many times, John, over the years with Bob. Didn't change it.
I had it at the Renfrew prize giving. We were invited a few years later, and Bob got up to speak, and that was. So he knew the value of a good line.
Yep.
In terms of Bob's off-court impact and legacy of all the things he did after his playing career, the coaching, obviously with the national teams, with Renfrew, with the Masters, where do you think Bob's legacy lies? Where do you think the biggest impact he had on the game of basketball in Scotland was?
Well, I would say John's touched on that. Maybe John will speak again about the fact that he was involved in the formation of Renfrew. But without a shadow of a doubt, Bob coached junior boys, young guys for many, many years at club level. He did that with St Mirren for a long time, did it for a wee spell with Troon as well. But really, it was international level. I think he had a big impact in number, because I coached with Bob. Bob was my assistant for 10 years, Scotland junior men. And we travelled all over Europe, travelled to North America. And he was a great influence with the kids. It was often said, and I think arguably true, that I may have been a half pint empty person, and Bob counterbalanced that being a half pint full person. He always had in fact, I used to think we'd be playing the Los Angeles Lakers and Bob would tell him we're going to win this, boys. He had a great outlook in basketball, a great outlook in life, I have to say. But there are many, many young people, many, many players who are still playing the game, who will be thankful that Bob was a part in their lives, I think.
Yeah, I think that was obviously his funeral, actually, the number of youngsters that he'd obviously coached throughout the years were all there at his funeral. You know, it's quite impressive.
Yeah, I think that's true. There's certain people in Scottish basketball and who make their impact over the breadth of the game, and Bob was certainly one of those. I think he certainly coached. It would be St Mirren or Paisley juniors, and I remember one cup final he played. I was associated with the Glasgow Wrens, and the St Mirren coach was on holiday or something, and Bob coached them in a national final. And it just shows you he was willing to contribute wherever asked, and wherever he felt he could have an impact, and he certainly had an impact.
Johnny coached for many, many years with St Mirren, many years, and he actually got to a number of Scottish Cup finals with St Mirren. He spent a long time with them, and then after that he moved to Troon. One of the things I would say, Andrew, is that it shows you something about his impact in Masters basketball, and that this weekend we have a game between Scotland and Ireland for the Bob Taft Memorial game, and I think Bob passed away in February, and the Irish team came up with the trophy, I think that year. I think it may have been June or something. We played him for the first time in Glasgow, but he was well liked and well respected on and off the floor with these guys. And it says something that they put the trophy up, and we're still playing for that, and hopefully we'll continue to play for it for a long time.
I caught up with Liam Lavelle from the Irish Masters team to chat about Bob and his thoughts ahead of this weekend's match.
Delighted to welcome Liam to the podcast. Hi, Liam.
Hi, Andrew.
Delighted to have you on to talk about Bob ahead of this week's trophy match. Maybe just start us off. What were your first interactions with Bob, and what were your first impressions of him?
Well, I suppose we played against the Strathclyde selection, which is a Scottish selection that played over 50s, and we've met in various tournaments. I think we mostly got the better of them, but the odd time we'd have to eat humble pie, and we kind of ended up in some finals or some being knocked out or whatever. But we ended up being good rivals and good friends, I suppose, because the social aspect of Masters basketball is quite important. I know they were coming to Galway since the tournament started. We were going to Strathclyde since their tournament started, and we've both been going to tournaments like the British Masters and World Masters games and things like that. So I suppose when we played, I started playing at over 50 level in 2007, and the British Masters, and we would have come up against the Strathclyde lads who were very good at the time. And subsequently, when we went through our 50s and ended up being over 60, we decided we'd start another section of over 60s, and we were again pitted against Bob and the guys. Actually, we were going to a tournament in France, I think, in Nice, and we didn't have enough over 60s, so we invited the Scottish guys to come and join us, and they did. And subsequently, we had a team half and half, Irish and Scots, and we kind of dubbed it Celtic Warriors, and played in blue and green, and had very good fun together. And we did the same thing. That was in 2017, I think, and 2019 we did the same thing in Turin, and we really enjoyed the playing with the guys. Bob was a part of that team, integral part, with Tom Campbell and John Campbell and Nigel Fiddle and Bobby Morton and all those guys. So Bobby had a good eye for the basket. He was a very good long shooter, you know. He'd do very well in today's game where 3-pointers are in vogue. He was able to knock down 3-pointers from far beyond where we could mark him. So he was always a threat.
You mentioned it there, his outside shooting, which was something that Tom and John mentioned, especially on my other recording. Is that what defined Bob's game most, do you think, as a player? Do you think it was his outside shooting, or were there other aspects to his game that you think defined him as a player?
I think that was the one you'd notice. He was probably a good defender and a good strong player as well, you know. So he could take you off the dribble if you gave him enough room, or if you went too close to him. And similarly, he could knock the three in if you weren't close enough to him, you know. So he was a good player, and he made good decisions, and he was good to play with as well as play against, you know. But one of the nice things about him was his sense of humor. You know, he was fun to be with, and have a few drinks after the game, and you always knocked a good laugh out of him. I think that's one of the memories I'll have anyway.
The trophy match this week.
Yeah.
How did that get going, and who was involved in that initially setting up?
Oh God, that's well. I suppose the trophy in particular was, we kind of were setting up to play when you get to the older age group, like 60, 65, 70. There's not that much tournament competition. There aren't that many tournaments with brackets that are that. So the boys being older and us being older, we decided to have a challenge match every year, and it was appropriate that Bobby had passed, so we bought a trophy and engraved it, and Bobby's wife presented it to the first challenge. Was in Glasgow, and we travelled over and played the lads in a Scottish selection. And as I recall, we lost, and so I think the next year then we invited them over, and we had a game, and I'm not sure, I think we might have won that one. So it was bouncing back and forth, and everybody was getting older, and so this year we decided that we would, in honour of Bobby's 70th, he's the same age as I am, so he's, I think, born in 56, so we kind of have enough guys now to make a 70s team, well, almost. So we said we'd make it over 70 this year. It was over 65 previously. So we'll travel to Glasgow and play in the Play Sport Arena, a challenge match at over 70s. So hopefully it'll generate a little bit of controversy or whatever, that old men running around like young fellas might not be everyone's cup of tea, but we'll have fun anyway.
Good, that's the main thing. Why do you think the match is still important on its 5th anniversary?
Well, I think first of all, it gives us a competitive game at over 70 level, which, as I said, there's not too many competitions that provide for over 70 basketball players. So the Strathclyde or Scotland competition with Ireland is very important to us, and I think probably to the Scots as well. We are hoping to extend that when we get a bit older, or when we get a few older players. We're looking at doing a Tri-Nations in September, October maybe, trying to get England involved, and they should have a reasonably competitive team maybe this year or next year. So it's just a case of trying to keep everyone active and everyone going, and as long as we can do that, we might live a little bit longer, you know.
And finally, Liam, what are you looking forward to most about this weekend?
I'm looking forward to seeing the Gladiators Arena and to see pro basketball in the UK. I've seen the odd game, but I haven't been to many of the what's now the Super League games, and I'm interested in seeing that. And obviously, I'm interested in meeting the lads again and having a few drinks and catching up with them. We do see each other reasonably frequently at tournaments, so we get. I mean, last time was in March. Before that was in Dundee in January, and we'll see each other actually Strathclyde aren't coming to Dublin, but we'll see them sometime in the near future again. So,
Liam, thank you very much for your time, and best of luck with the match this weekend.
Thank you, Andrew.
And back now to Tom, John and Charlie.
And of course, at the weekend there, Charlie was there as well. We're watching the Strathclyde finals, and the trophy for the junior men's final is the Robert Taft Trophy, and it was Bob's wife that was there to present it this weekend. So yes, a lasting legacy.
What's the importance of this weekend's tournament, and why do you think so many people want to be involved, even all these years later?
I think camaraderie. I mean, every day Bob played in the Masters since when did I say 2002?
Yeah.
We made so many friends wherever we went. Not just Bob, the Strathclyde team, you know, was well liked and well respected wherever they went. Bob, being the kind of top joke teller and everything else, you know, was involved in everything that went along. And you just make so many really good friendships. And the Irish boys love coming over to play us, and we love going over to play them. And it was them that come up with the idea, and that'll go on. This will go on after we're not here, but you know, somebody will keep it going because it's such an important thing.
I think it's an important thing in general. And certainly, Andrew, it's because of my 40-year relationship with Bob, and he was my best friend. It's very important to me that the game goes ahead and the trophy continues.
No, Bob definitely, he liked the social side of the game as well, and he was always to the forefront. I can remember it would be a few British Masters, maybe 2 or 3 further down the line from the one when Bob and Tommy first joined us, the game over in Dublin. This one was at Sheffield, and we were going to the dinner, which was held at Bramall Lane, the Sheffield United ground, and we came out, and Bob, I think he was the main man. There was a stretch limo, a big white stretch limo, setting down a bunch of young women, and Bob negotiated with the driver that he would take us to Bramall Lane. So the whole team got in, and we had some kind of cheap plonk on the 5 or 6 minute drive to Bramall Lane. I don't think we would have got that if Bob hadn't stepped forward and used his charm or his negotiating ability.
Well, John, I've got to tell you, right, my recollection is slightly different. Because the guy who arranged that was another well-known figure in Scottish basketball. It was John Grant. John Grant was there, and John had the wherewithal to go and speak to the guy. But you're right, we did. We travelled in the stretch limo, and we had the cheapest plonk. I think you're right. Probably vinegar in the road there. But no, that was, and again, that's another path that Bob crossed as well with John through junior men and international men. Yeah, that was a very interesting night, John. And I think to put that in perspective as well, what Bob did do that weekend, I think Bob arranged the accommodation. And do you remember the place we stayed in?
That was
Yeah.
Like
a DHS.
a DHS place. That's right. Yes, that's right. Well, Bob got a bit of stick for that, John. I can assure you, right?
Well, I didn't want to mention it like that. And the principle, he who's without sin can't cast the first stone. You know,
Right.
I arranged one or two poor ones myself.
Yeah.
But yes, yeah.
Yeah.
But it was very good stepping out the limo in front of the football club and all the
Yes,
people.
that's
behind
right.
it. Oh, they're all looking at, who's this coming in the limo, you know?
Yeah.
The Strathclyde team rolled out. Yeah.
Yeah, another good night.
Very good. Well, to wrap up, why don't we... I'll give you the option. You can tell your favourite as yet untold Bob Taft joke, or you can tell your favourite as yet untold Bob Taft story.
Well, I can't. I'll tell you the joke. John mentioned the one that I had that time and time again from Bob, and I knew that Bob. If I tried to beat Bob, would come in quickly, and once or twice I did. He would come back with something else. But the other well-known one was where Bob would say, "What's the difference between Tommy and a coconut?" And he said, "You can get a drink out of a coconut." So I get that all the time. And it's very interesting because the gentleman's involved in this, John Campbell. We played a Masters in Dundee. I remember that evening we were sitting outside, in fact with kilts on, sitting outside at the end of the first day, and John goes up, stands up and says, "Tommy, I'd like to present you this box. And I think for some whatever way you played, you get this box." And because it was John, I never thought anything of it, right? So I stood up. I'm beaming big. I'm really pleased at this, getting this award from my teammates. Opened the box, and inside it was a coconut. Right, and I believe, John, that Bob had put you up to doing that. Is that right? Bob had supplied the coconut.
That's right.
The coconut, and I fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. Yep, that was Bob.
I think the only I always remember it when we were Turin, we were playing the team for Lithuania, who had two really first-class guards, quick as anything. And it was one of the Irish boys that was coaching, and it's the first time I've seen Bob he get picked to start, and the coach said to him, he says, "Right, Bob, you take number 5." It was one of the wee fast guards, and Bob squirmed out this, he managed, "Oh, I don't think I should be marking him," because nobody wanted to mark this guy. But Bob managed to squirm out the way he marked this wee guard, I thought it was so funny watching him.
Yeah. No, I was just playing with Renfrew, playing in the Masters. The 2 years before Turin, Bob and Tommy and I and a chap from down south in Rochdale were invited to play with the Irish team in Nice. And I just think it was a great experience. Bob was struggling a bit with fitness, and he was a bit down, but he still was the life and soul of the party.
Absolutely, yeah.
Wore the kilt in the opening ceremonies, and it's just every aspect of basketball he was to the forefront, and he was a great teammate.
Gents, thank you very, very much for your time. It's been great chatting about Bob. He obviously had a outsized impact on your lives and the lives of many people involved in basketball in Scotland. So thank you very much for your time, and best of luck with the trophy match against Ireland on Friday.
Thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, Andrew.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye.